Welcome to the How to Drink Halloween special. Hey, so this is the How to Drink Horror Film Extravaganza, the Halloween special. Here we go. I wanted to make drinks inspired by 3 mostly horror movies that I liked. I hate a lot of movies too, but I like a lot of movies, and I like a lot of horror movies, and like, how do you pick? So I'm racking my brain. I got a list of every movie that I maybe kind of sort of want to do drinks from, and what do I zero in on? Well, I zero in on movies that I feel like, well, actually, that in point in fact, have potions in them. That makes my life a lot easier. So we're gonna make some potions, some serums, and some gunk today on How to Drink. First movie, Death Becomes Her. It's a great movie. Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn, Bruce Willis, the Potion Lady, whom I was a young man when I saw this movie. I like the Potion Lady.
We are creatures of the spring, you and I.
Okay, let's make Death Becomes Her. So the potion in this movie is a swirly, twirly, illuminated thing in a spike of glass. 2 things. I don't actually have that vase. You could buy them prop from the movie. Apparently online it's about $1,000. I'm not gonna spend $1,000 on this. Maybe it was like $3,000 or $4,000. It was a lot of money. You know, it's like the actual hero prop that was used on set. I'm crazy. I'm not that kind of crazy. 2, the potion is very clearly illuminated. And if you want it to be illuminated, you can go back in time to 1992 and rotoscope this episode yourself. Or we'll just put a backlight behind it, because actually it's unnaturally illuminated. I don't even think they had like a little light beaming into it. They did that in post. There are limits to what I can do. I'm gonna get real close. I'm gonna get real close to that illumination, but I'm not gonna nail it because physics. Anything that you can drink that is self-illuminating will kill you. Just how to drink advice. If you pour 2 liquids together and they start glowing, don't drink it. So this drink, I look at it and I'm like, okay, it's gotta have all of this swirly twirly stuff in it, right? And actually, if I did this as a shook drink, if I made it like a sour or something like that, I think a lot of that would get lost. And if I put any kind of thing with fruit pulp in it, it would also get lost. Like, that would compete with our swirly twirly, which, by the way, is just going to be luster dust. What do? Well, what I do is, so this is lime juice that I have clarified, and I clarified it using a technique called the agar-agar gel clarification. I don't know if it's agar-agar or agar. I think it's agar-agar though. But it's made from seaweed, actually, and Dave Arnold Dave Arnold figured this out. He is the master of clarifying things. And if you want to clarify this stuff, you will need some telephone brand agar-agar, which I'll put a link to in the pinned comment below. And also, you will want to have Dave Arnold's book, Liquid Intelligence, which I misplaced in this past week, doing all these fancy cocktail things. It's around here somewhere. But look at this. There's a link and a picture to both of them right up top there. So with all of that said, which was a hell of a lot, let's get to making this drink. We are going to start, and I'm going to go in a weird order here, because in my mind, usually you go cheapest ingredient to most expensive, but I put a lot of work into that lime juice, so in my mind, that is the most expensive ingredient here. So we're gonna start with a ½ ounce of Chambord, and this is sometimes called the Holy Hand Grenade. My bottle is kind of gross looking. I should have cleaned it before we use it on camera, but this is a raspberry or blackberry liqueur, ½ ounce. And it smells pretty potent. Now I want a ½ ounce of Maraschino. Okay, now I wanna do 2 ounces of gin, which apparently we're gonna use Aviation gin, why not? This is an actor's gin, and there are actors in the movie Death Becomes Her. Therefore, it's the appropriate gin. All right, so then we're gonna add 1 ounce of our clarified lime juice. Got our pink luster dust. I almost opened it like sideways, and while my hands were flailing, don't do that. You gotta be careful of it. So pink luster dust, this is stuff that like bakers use to make like shiny cake stuff. What goes on the outside of a cake?
Fondant.
Fondant, yeah, but I'm icing on a cupcake. If you want it shiny, you might use luster dust. It's an edible kind of glitter. How much do you add? Look in the close-up. That's how much you add, because honestly, it's almost weightless, this stuff. It is not something you can measure. That's the amount I'm adding, you know, a bump. That's probably a lot more than we need, by the way. Okay, we're gonna crack some ice into our glass here. And I know what you're thinking, but Greg, this drink isn't opaque, is now not clear. The reason why I wanted to use that clarified lime juice is because I don't want anything to compete with the look of this drink. Like, if there was colored lime juice in here, this stuff wouldn't even look pink anymore. It would look, I don't know, whatever red plus green looks like. Now, as I said, I don't have the exact glassware that they used, but I do have this. All right, so then we take our big old flute. Okay, this is the potion from Death Becomes Her. If it sits still, you know, the luster doesn't really show up too much, but if you give it just a little bit of motion, I think you get the effect that you're looking for there. Let's see how it is. That's a tasty drink. I like that. It's very reminiscent of a last word. In fact, because the maraschino, the lime, and the gin, it's a different ratio than in a last word, but that combination of flavors, you know it's going to work. It's going to work like a last word. To that, we throw in a little Chambord, which of course is very sophisticated and European, but also it's fruit. It's a berry liqueur, and I would just think about that character describing herself as, I follow this spring. And so I think of that in bloom, flowers, fruits, and I kind of like that idea. What I almost did before we shot this was throw in a bar spoon of Saint Germain, but this is the way I worked out the recipe. I'm going to test the Saint Germain because I'm still curious. I think it's either going to make it take it over some threshold into amazingdom, or it's going to make it garbage. It's a light, tart, refreshing, balanced drink with just a touch of sweetness and with some raspberry, blackberry notes kind of hidden in there. I like it a lot. The maraschino is great. You get the berries kind of on the end there. Let's just see if I'm crazy about this idea or not. A little extra, little shot of Saint Germain. I was worried somewhat that it would affect the color of the drink, but obviously it hasn't. Saint Germain is an elderflower liqueur, and I just think flowers, spring, in bloom. Oh no, I like that. Do that. Make that the official. That kicks it up. I thought it might be just a skosh tarter than I wanted to be, and very much like a last word because they're pretty tart actually. But with that Saint Germain, it puts a different character on that tartness, and it turns it from pure tart to tart flowers. I'm going to enjoy this, and we'll be right back with another drink from a movie I really enjoy. Now we're going to make the Reanimator Serum. Have you ever seen Reanimator, Meredith?
I haven't.
Oh, wow. So Reanimator is based on a short story by H.P. Lovecraft, very problematic author, but also inspired so much horror and weird science type stories from the 20th century. Huge influence, very racist piece of shit. So Herbert West, Reanimator, he's a guy he's a doctor, a scientist who figures out how to bring people back from the dead. It's a zombie flick, and also there are traditional zombies in this movie who seem to just be rampaging and unintelligible, but there are also like the intelligent undead is like a factor in this film as well.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't come back, like they come back like alive.
Okay.
It is an unsettling story. They are undead, and there is something about being undead that removes you from all social consequences and turns you into a monster. His professor becomes obsessed with repeating the experiment and bringing people back from the dead. It yields this scene in the horror film that is referred to as Head Gives Head. I think you can imagine. It's quite gruesome and famous. It's a real gross movie, yeah. And then there is like a scene, you know, at some point like the whole morgue has to get up and there's like a rampage and stuff. So I think zombies are scary. But Reanimator, we're gonna do it. To make this drink, by the way, obviously you gotta have some hypodermic needles. We'll find something like this. These are great though. We got these at Spirit Halloween. They're fantastic because they're very clearly, I think they're meant for either like hooking up an airline tube to move blood around or something, or specifically for drinking out of, because they have like this off-center tube, and it makes it, I don't know, they work good for putting shots into, basically. My thought process behind this drink, right? I know, what does it gotta be? It's gotta be green, it's gotta be glowing. I just told you I can't do glowing without killing you. It also has to kind of wake you up. I wanted it to be a bright green espresso martini. Get it? Reanimator. So we looked into, does clear coffee exist? It doesn't. Turns out it doesn't.
It tried to.
It tried to exist, it doesn't exist. And then I had a thought, eureka! There's a lot of caffeine in matcha. I know, because I love matcha, and it really gets me going. Matcha is a kind of green tea that is drunk in Japan, actually, in a whole matcha ceremony. You gotta like do this little bamboo whisk thing, and it's just powdered leaves. It's got the whole leaf powdered. That's why it's so potent. Potent's the word I'm looking for. Now, we did a bunch of experiments with that, where we were just adding matcha to the cocktail. And the problem with that was that it comes out gunky, you know, because the powder is still in there. And so I tried this idea of doing a vodka infusion, taking matcha and infusing it into vodka. And what came out was this, which is pretty brown looking. So I thought, dag nabbit, that's not gonna work. But it did, because it doesn't have that gunk in it anymore. But it is an infusion of matcha as opposed to having actual matcha powder in it. And if you put your nose to it, it smells like matcha. there's a lot of matcha in this. It is a shake and drink, so you're gonna need your shaker, and I've talked about it a heck of a lot, and you're gonna need an ounce of Midori. I often make drinks that have to be green on the show, and I often try to build those drinks in a way that is both true to what it needs to be, but also does not involve Midori because it's so expected. But in fairness, I have exhausted every trick for getting a drink to be green without Midori. Sometimes you just gotta go with what works, you know what I mean? So here we go, 1 ounce of Midori. Now I need an ounce of lime juice. So we're gonna use an ounce of clarified lime juice, but actually in this drink you can just use regular lime juice. Now I need a half an ounce of simple, which is around here somewhere. People always tell me that like, oh, Midori is already so sweet. Yeah, but it's also not. It might have a high sugar content, but frankly, to balance its flavor profile, I actually think it doesn't have quite as much sugar as it really should have. But I also think that they don't want to put that much sugar in it because it might put people off. Like it'd be like Coca-Cola. Midori works better and tastes better when you put it with a little sweetness. That's just my personal opinion. And anyway, I made this drink a bunch of times and it needed a half an ounce of simple. Now I'm gonna need an ounce and a half of my matcha infused vodka. And actually, if you look at it, it looks brown, but it has a greenish tinge to it as well. All right, we're gonna shake that up. I went backwards this time. I did the... And it does kind of foam up, which is really fun. And I'm gonna actually pour it into this tasting glass just to demonstrate this. It does kind of foam up into a matcha latte of sorts. I like the way that looks a lot. I think that's a great way to serve this, but the way you should serve this is in a syringe. And then you can put these in like a skull like we have back here and just let people grab them and go. And like, honestly, that really looks pretty good. It's not quite literally oxidizing and glowing like a glow stick because that would kill you, but it's pretty good. Okay, here we go.
Awesome party drink.
I love it. I would never have thought Midori and matcha would go well together, but they really go well together. They don't try to occupy the same space. So you get this like oscillating flavor passes through this like sweet, tart Midori sour spot, and then it moves into this earthy matcha flavor, this tea flavor. And the transition is really enjoyable. It slides from one end of the spectrum on a cocktail all the way to this other end of the spectrum. And it does so, I would say, elegantly, which is, you know, obviously I'm putting on airs about it a little bit, but it actually, it's good. It's good. If you really want something that's just electric green and not a cocktail, all you gotta do is do Midori and vodka. We just did a drink that had a big pour of bitters, and that one, you get this mouth-drying bitterness up front. In this one, you get a lighter version of that on the back end of it, and also the taste of matcha, which, I mean, again, if you don't know what matcha tastes like, it's gonna be hard for me to explain it. Like, I don't know how to break it down into components smaller than its own, like the ingredient that it is. I do have to say, just shook like that, it's really cool that it gets this kind of a head on it. That's a lot of fun, and that's the matcha does that, you know, because when you whisk a matcha bowl, it should have a frothy head on it. I don't know how to describe it, but I can tell you it's actually really good. It's way better than a stupid party drink has any right to be. Wow, I'm so happy with it. I'm gonna stay here and reanimate myself, and we'll be right back with another horror movie, Return of the Living Dead. All right, so we're gonna talk about Return of the Living Dead. Now, first off, I gotta tell you, I love Night of the Living Dead. I think that's a really very cool movie, first of its kind, transgressive cinema, breaking new ground, progressive cinema, and low budget, low budget movie. Love it. I've seen it like 300 times, I think, at this point. I'm not actually clear on all the details here, Meredith, but somebody else was involved in Night of the Living Dead, and he and George Romero had a falling out. And George got to keep Night of, and the other guy got to keep Living Dead. And so George went and did Night of the Living Dead, then he did Dawn of the Dead, had to lose Living Dead. Did Day of the Dead, City of the Dead, etc. Other guy got to keep Living Dead, and he did Return of the Living Dead, which I think there was some tension over because it sounded a lot like a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. And then Return of the Living Dead's part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever. This drink, we need to have a glass called a trifle, which is not quite the same as a coupe. It's opener, it's heavier. I worked on this a couple different ways. This is, by the way, my drink for Return of the Living Dead, Mudman Gunk. Brains. Great puppetry in this movie. Fantastic puppetry. I love it. So Mudman Gunk, and if you've seen the movie, you're going to get that. It's going to go in a trifle glass. It is going to be an ice cream-based drink, a little bit of a dessert thing. All right, all right. We're gonna take our small tin, put our glass off to the side here. Actually, I wanna take this trifle. In this drink, in this case, I wanna make sure this has been chilled, so we're gonna put it in the freezer. In a lot of drinks, it's not vital, and yep, this is my ice cream. I'm actually kinda letting that warm up. But in a lot of drinks, it's nice to have a frozen glass, but we can get away with it not being frozen. But I did make a note the other night that in this particular case, it really should be frozen. So, to make this drink, it's actually not that complicated. Well, there's a couple weird steps, but the actual ingredients are pretty simple. The first ingredient, and by the way, yes, I am heating up some boiling water. It's a little loud. I'm yelling over it. Okay, so the first thing we want, we're gonna use some Mr. Black in this one, coffee liqueur. Again, I like the theme of caffeine, back from the dead. So we want Mr. Black, and this particular Mr. Black rested on previously used rum barrels from Bundaberg. If you can get it, great. I don't think it's 100% necessary to make this drink work. I don't even think it's 50% necessary to make this drink work. But if you can get it, that's awesome. It's even better. 1.5 ounces of Mr. Black. Now, I want 1 ounce of Amaro de Angostura. This is not a supremely popular Amaro. I really feel like it should be. It's maybe one of my favorites because I love Angostura bitters, and it kind of tastes like that. So I hope you can find this. Certainly, Curiata will have Amaro de Angostura. Check out the link up there, link in the pin comment below. Go on over to Curiata and get your Amaro Angostura. Really good Amaro, it's my favorite. 1 ounce of this. I'm getting a little tipsy. Everybody in the club getting tipsy. You know that song?
Yeah, have I ever told you my story about that song?
I have a story about that song too.
Mine's quick.
Yours what?
Mine's quick.
Okay, go ahead.
No, we were in college. We were shooting one of the student films, and I was on set for it. And there was a kid in the film, and that song had just come out, and it was his favorite song. And his mom was like, "He thinks it's everyone in the club getting chips."
Oh, that's
so
fine.
For the whole shoot, everyone kept walking around being like, "Everybody in the club getting chips," and this kid just thought he was the coolest.
That's awesome. I heard that song when I was living in Atlantic City and repossessing cars, and I was cruising through Atlantic City in the police car that I bought for $500 because I had an LS1 police car. But anyway, I was driving around Atlantic City, and that would come on the radio, and I thought he was singing, "Everybody in the club getting tips." I thought he was bragging about how much money he has and what a generous fella he is. I thought he was just like, "I'm gonna make it rain," which is not unlikely. That's like a likely, everybody getting tipsy, everybody getting tips. I think both work great. Both work great. So the next ingredient you need is some Plantation OFTD, old-fashioned traditional dark. This is some overproof 69% rum, 1 ounce of this madness. Now, we're gonna borrow a little trick here from Jeffrey Morgenthaler, and we're gonna do something called making what he calls a bartender's bain-marie, or water bath. So I got a pot of boiling water here, and I'm just gonna pour this into my big tin. And why are we doing this? Well, I actually want to get my ingredients hot, but I also don't want to water them down. Cool. Just like halfway up, 2/3 of the way up. Then I've got my small tin, and instead of turning it over, like I'm going to shake it, I'm just going to set it in there and let it float. Take my bar spoon, and I'm going to stir the ingredients in the small tin. Now we're kind of, sometimes you do a water bath to cool things down. You stir it, the liquid, you want to stir it because you're changing hands about which part of that liquid is in contact with the cold surface. Same idea backwards. We're changing hands of what part of that liquid is in contact with the hot surface, and we're heating it up. Okay, so we're going to heat it up without adding any water to it. It's brilliant. It is a truly genius technique. The only problem is that right now this is super hot. So the next thing we need to do is set up the drink. Okay, we got our glass. So now I'm going to put in some ice cream. Oh, this ice cream got very hard. I really wish I broke it. I wish I had like a nice ice cream scoop. I don't. I would be so much more artful looking. You should get a nice ice cream scoop. They're wonderful things until they break. And then you can have beautiful lumps of perfect ice cream, okay? There we go, just some ice cream, okay? Who doesn't love ice cream? I guess the lactose intolerant. Actually, I had a friend who was lactose intolerant, and he still loved ice cream. He would just decide, it's ice cream day, and then I'm gonna be sick. So I'm just gonna finish this. This is probably already hot, and we're just gonna pour this right over the top of our ice cream, and that is our Mudman Gunk. It's kind of a riff on affogato, honestly. Why does it have to be hot? Well, it has to be hot because one, I want the ice cream to be melting. I do. You can stir it in and drink it, or you can eat it with a spoon. It's kind of an alcoholic ice cream float, and it is delicious. I don't really even need to describe this for you to know that it's delicious. It's ice cream and rum and coffee. A true match made in heaven. If you had like a little skull or skeleton boy you could stick in there, that'd be great. For a garnish or something like that. There's something like scully looking. I don't got anything like that here. I'll garnish it with this copper skull. And honestly, the fact that it's called Mudman Gunk, that it starts to look pretty funky, in here is great. It works out good. It's a lot like a mudslide. That's probably why I leaned in this direction, because I was thinking Mudman, Mudslide. It's Tarman. I keep calling him Mudman, but everybody calls him Tarman. It's Tarman Gunk. Anyway, that's what I thought. I forgot that he's called Tarman because they don't ever use that name in the movie. That's just like in online discourse, which I don't really engage in. And so in my head, he's Mudman, and I thought Mudman Gunk. And so I made kind of this weird riff on a mudslide that's also an affogato. It means drowned in Italian. And then I found out it was Tarman, and I was supposed to update my notes to say Tarman Gunk, but I didn't.
It's okay. The graphics have fixed you all the way through.
It's like crossing itself out. So what you get with this drink is this coffee, bitter, but not like coffee, but bitter like spices and bitter like earthiness and like an Amaro, like Angostura bitters. Highly boozy, rummy drink, and Plantation OFTD is a lovely rum. Very nice. It's a very nice rum despite its 66% alcohol by volume, mixed with ice cream. So you've set all of those, you know, hot alcohol, everything off with this creamy, vanilla, delicious dessert drink. Also, if your glass is chilled and your ice cream is cold, you get a very cool fog effect. I don't know. I wasn't planning on that. That was great. It kind of looks like when the barrels open up in the movie and all the gas comes out. I made 3 drinks today from 3 movies that I really enjoyed. Made the Reanimator Serum, I made the Tarman Gunk, which I apparently have drank and ate all of, and I made the potion from Death Becomes Her, which is a great movie, by the way. I think more people should see that movie. It's fantastic. I don't think you need to see Reanimator. I love Reanimator, but you can live without it. But Turn to Living Dead and Death Becomes Her, you gotta see them. They're so good. They're both so good, for different reasons. Great performances, so much fun. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine. It's just like gory camp from the 80s. It has a couple of really cool scenes in it. But anyway, I hope you're enjoying spooky season. You'll find me on Twitch, Twitter, Patreon, the very important one that helps me make this show, TikTok, and Instagram. I knew there was another one. I've been making the show a very long time. I hope you will enjoy these. I've done some other Halloween drinks. We'll pop them up here on screen. I did a Hocus Pocus. Probably should have done another one because Hocus Pocus 2 just came out, but I heard it was bad. I did a Hocus Pocus thing. I've done some other Halloween-y stuff. Maybe pumpkin juice is Halloween-y. Anyway, I will see you very soon with another episode of HTD. I hope you stay spooky.